Hello my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/IDontWorkHereLady, where people confuse others as employees when they're just regular customers. And in today's episode, OP tells a tale about the time his niece gets kidnapped by a principal, guys. And the story is absolutely wild. I hope you enjoyed today's lineup. Hit subscribe if you haven't. And as always, you can send or link your stories to this email right here. So here's some background. I'm an amputee due to a car accident, my left leg. This story takes place like 2 or 3 weeks after I got my cast off. I was at the store to get some stuff for dinner and looking at the baking aisle, and I was in a bit of a rush. I was wearing a teal top with gray shorts, and I was in a wheelchair. I had grabbed a couple of things and I was turning around to leave that aisle, and as you probably expected, an older lady comes up to me and she asked for help. Now, I'm clearly not an employee who at this place wears black pants and either a black or tan shirt, and I'm clearly in a wheelchair. The woman comes up to me and says, "Hey, you, I need this thing from up there." She then points to the top shelf, like miles above my sitting height. Now, I would have done it if I was whole, but I have terrible balance now, and I don't like to stand without my crutches. So I say to her, okay, I don't think I'm gonna be able to reach that at all. Like, maybe you can. She then interrupts me and says, "No, I don't want to find someone else. I want you to get it for me." Me being me says, "How?" She says, "Just stand up and get it." I say to her, you can see that I'm in a wheelchair, right? That's not happening. Karen says, "So, if you work here, you need to help customers." And I'm thinking, wow, it's still not clicking. And I say, lady, I'm actually not an She then interrupts again and says, "I said if you work here, you should help customers. That's your job." I finally get to say to her, "Oh, I'm a customer, I'm not an employee, sorry." Hearing that, Karen looks as if she's finally seen the light, and she takes in my entire appearance. She somehow went pale and red at the same time, and I'm still amazed by that feat. And then she rushed off. Okay guys, so even if OP was an employee, like, what that Karen did was such an a-hole thing to do, right? Like, who the heck does that? I don't care if you're wheelchair bound. You need to stand up. I need you, someone in a wheelchair, to get something that I can't even reach. Like, holy crap, guys. The ridiculous things that some people say never ceases to amaze me. Like, they really don't. I'm a 24-year-old female who lives in a retirement home. Why I live here is due to my health. I'm having issues with blood properly flowing to my brain. I also live in Canada, and the whole process is taking months to properly diagnose. Now, why I was allowed to move into a retirement home was because of my health and how close the hospital is. Now, it's not a normal retirement home. It's more of an apartment complex for people 60 and above. I've also not been able to do laundry for 3 months due to my health. I'm having issues with my balance, and my husband's been doing everything around the house. On this day, I decide to try doing laundry for the first time in 3 months, to try to build up confidence and take it slow. I start doing laundry downstairs in the shared laundry room around 9:40 a.m. After a while, I went down to get my laundry out of the washing machine to put into the dryer, and there I was met with a personal support worker with her arms crossed. A personal support worker is like a nurse that comes to your house. They do laundry and help with anything. The woman says to me, "Hey, you're not allowed to use this washing machine right now. I need to use this washing machine. My shift is shorter than yours and I don't have enough time." I say to her, "The rules are first come first serve for the washing machine. It says above the machine." The lady then says, "Who do you work for?" I say to her, excuse me?" She says, "Are you even a support worker?" I tell her, "No, I live here." The woman says, "No, you don't. You're way too young to live here." I tell her, "I've been living here for 3 months now." And she says, "Well, you should know that you're not supposed to use the washing machine. Thursday at 10 a.m. is when I use it. And I use it because I'm helping sick people who can't do their laundry, unlike you." I then went upstairs for 20 minutes after putting my load in the dryer. And I came back down after 20 minutes to check on my load, and the machine was turned off. The woman had turned the dryer off, took out all my wet clothes, and put it on top of the dryer. My clothes were soaking wet. I had to sit downstairs for 40 minutes to make sure she didn't turn it off again. And that's when she saw me and she starts yelling and says, "I have a short shift. I need the machines now." I say to her, "Your load isn't even ready to be put in the dryer. I'm finishing my load because it's soaking wet." She tells me, "I've been doing this for 8 years here and I've never had any issues before you came along." I tell her, "You should contact the landlord then." She says, "No, I'm gonna put a note on the machine stating that no one's allowed to use the machines at this time. The woman then starts slurring angrily and she's yelling. I tell her I have a hearing disability, I don't understand you. The woman had to wait an extra 20 minutes when she could have just let me finish drying, and she didn't even have a load to dry at that time either. I filed a complaint, and apparently she's gonna be contacted by her employer. Yeah, so I just want to say that it doesn't sound like that woman has any business working with people. Never mind caring for them, right? Because she sounds like a wonderful person. Also, I feel like OP should start doing her laundry at 9:40 on Thursdays from now on, just to spite that woman. So I work as a sampler at a large warehouse superstore. My uniform is a white polo and black pants with a blue apron. I say this because in no way do I look like I work at Target. So my story begins after work. It was about 6 p.m. and I decided to stop by Target near my work. As I was wandering, I was listening to music on some cheap $5 headphones. I was looking to see if there were any good movies for the weekend binge. And that's when this woman in her 40s comes up behind me and she jams her finger into my shoulder. I turned around and pulled out an earbud saying, I'm sorry, I'll move. I say that while stepping to the side, and the woman says, "Where are you going? You need to help me." At that I reply, "I'm sorry, I don't work here." And I proceed to put my earbud back in. And that's when out of nowhere, she grabs the wire to my earbud and she rips it out of my ear. For context, these were $5 earbuds that I got at Walmart. The woman then says, "Don't give me that crap. Now stop being lazy and help me find." I stop the woman right there and say, "I don't work here, leave me alone." I then go and put the earbud back in, and that's when she pulls it out a second time saying, "How dare you? You are fired." And then she storms off. I go to put my earbud back in, and surprise, surprise, I couldn't hear anything from it. All of a sudden, I can hear a loud voice, and it's that woman again with an employee. She starts screaming, "There he is. There's that man who won't help me, and he called me a bitch." The employee tells her, "Ma'am, he's not an employee here, but I can help you." The woman says, "What do you mean? He's wearing a white polo. Of course he works here." The employee tells her, "Ma'am, all Target employees wear red polos." Seeing a chance to be petty, I chimed in and said, "Excuse me, miss, I think you need to buy me new headphones since you broke mine," ripping them out of my ear twice. Of course, the woman says, "I will not." And I tell her, if not, I can always press charges on assault. I'm sure there's cameras that caught the whole thing, and I will call the police. At this, without another word, the woman just grabs a pair of $40 headphones, she bought them, and then she throws them at me before storming out. Guys, I gotta say that I am actually impressed at the fact that this woman actually replaced OP's set of earbuds. Like, consider that $40 a-hole tax that you had to pay for being such a rude person, Karen. With that said, guys, how many of you would have taken the $40 earbuds and still called the police? This took place in Germany, when my niece was visiting during her summer break. Summer break where she lived always started before ours, so school was still in session. On this day, my niece and I decided to take Doggo for a walk and go to the bakery on the other side of the street of a big school complex. So I go inside, she stays outside with Doggo, and I come back out and she was gone. Let us introduce the protagonist. There's the principal, me, and my niece. I then decide to call her on her cell phone, and this was the conversation. She picks up saying, "Thank God you're calling." Now I can hear some screaming in the background. Someone was saying something like, "How dare you take a phone call while I'm talking to you? You're in enough trouble for skipping class, blah blah blah." As I later found out, apparently he ripped the phone out of her hand and he must have hung up. I realize what must have happened, so I go to the school to clear up this misunderstanding and go right away to the principal's office, hoping she'd be there or soon brought there by a teacher. Outside, I can already hear him screaming at my niece. He kept telling her to stop lying, and I didn't even bother knocking, I just went straight inside. Seeing me, he says, "Who are you, and how dare you just come in here without knocking?" I tell him, "I'm the girl's uncle. What are you doing? She doesn't go to your school." He then tells me to get out of the office or the police will be called and I'll be arrested for trespassing inside a school. I tell him, "I'm not going anywhere. Calling the cops actually sounds like a great idea. After all, you've abducted my niece and you're holding her against her will." That's when I take out my phone, calling the police to the school, saying that my niece got kidnapped. The guy starts to shout at my niece again, who is in tears by now, and he's screaming at me to leave or I'll be arrested. So he called the police, only to find out that I actually did call the police. Suddenly, he wasn't so sure anymore, and you could tell that the cogs in his head were finally starting to turn. So the police arrived not too long after, and they asked us separately what the story was. So here's roughly what my niece told the cops. She told them that she was waiting outside the bakery, and that's when the principal comes charging at her like a bat from hell. He then screamed at her that he's really fed up with people skipping school, and he's gonna make an example out of her. Before she could get a word in edgewise, he grabs her by the arm really hard, and that's what started to get him into real trouble. The cops also took her info, and that's when they asked us if we want to press charges. And I said, just throw the book at him. The principal heard the police saying press charges and suddenly realized that he was in real deep crap, so the guy comes over and says, "Hey, so this is just a misunderstanding. You have to understand that I have to be strict with people skipping school." I tell him, if by strict you mean assaulting a minor by grabbing her arm, abducting her from my care, and withholding her by force in your office while screaming at her, I don't have to understand that. He then goes on and says, please, you're completely blowing this out of proportion. I tell him, good, anybody who treats a scared 12-year-old girl like that should never get to work with kids. In the end, he really did lose his job. He was also forbidden to ever work with kids again, and I'm glad he did. During the investigation, it turned out that he belittled kids, always took the teacher's side no matter how wrong they were, and even slapped kids on several occasions. He went to court for assault and attempted kidnapping, plus wrongful imprisonment, and also a few more charges against students. He got 2 years probation and 500 hours community service with the stipulation it could be nothing that involved kids. He was also forbidden to ever work with kids again. So yeah, that principal is a freaking idiot, guys, and this post makes me so mad that man can be so dense to not realize that 1, not all kids that hang outside the bakery by the school go to that school, and 2, even if they were a student from that school and they did happen to be skipping, you should not be putting your hands on them and dragging them against their will anywhere. You crazy, crazy man. And also, what the heck happened to that dog that the niece was holding on to? That's what I want to know. So when I was a teenager, I worked in the general merchandise department of a major UK supermarket. It was stuff like TVs, CDs, homeware, etc. Basically anything other than food, toiletries, and cleaning stuff. This role meant that I was trained to use the till, but the majority of my work was still stocking shelves and recording stock in the warehouse. In this supermarket, as I'm sure is the case with most others, when things got busy, the checkout manager would call over the speakers to request help from all the till-trained staff, or specific staff members by name. When this happened, you normally had to drop what you were doing and just go sit at the tills until the queues were reduced. So one Saturday afternoon, I heard a call for someone whose name was vaguely similar to mine, but not the same. Let's say Adam instead of Andrew. Of course, I paid no attention to it, and I continued working on my stock check in the warehouse. When I returned to the shop floor about 20 minutes later, the checkout manager marches up to me and she yells that she told me to come down and I have to do what she says. I told her I never heard her call me, at which point she says, "Don't lie, Adam, you must have heard me." At this point it clicks that she doesn't even know my name, despite me having worked there for 6 months, regularly interacting with her, and had my name on her list of till-trained staff. So I calmly tell her that my name's Andrew, not Adam. She doesn't accept this, and we get into a bit of an argument where she's convinced that my name is Adam and that I'm just messing around. I told her to check with the duty manager, my line manager, or any supervisors on her team because I know them all. I then walked off to resume my work, and at the age of 17, it did feel a bit dangerous to walk away from a manager who was having a go at you. But I knew I was in the right, and I knew I could easily get one of the other managers on my side if she tried to punish me. I worked at that place for about a year after this incident, and at least once every week, I would hear "Adam to the checkouts." I knew full well that she was asking for me, but I never once answered the call-outs out of principle. When she tried to rage at me again, I told her that she didn't ask for me because my name's not Adam. After a few times, she finally spoke to my manager about disciplining me, to which my manager told her that she had it wrong. She then started to use my actual name after that, but she spoke to me like I was a piece of dirt every time she saw me. Gotta love it when vindictive, incompetent people get into small positions of power. Yeah, good on OP for standing up for himself, guys. It also sounds to me like that woman has a little problem with owning up to mistakes, because the only reason she'd keep calling OP Adam is because she doesn't want to be wrong, right? Or maybe she was just that dumb, who knows? When I was in college, I worked for maybe 2 weeks at a clothing store that's well known for their ads with preppy, muscular college guys with no shirts on, and the pretty girl next door type girls. My roommate worked there, so I got a job there as well. I've never worked somewhere that was as badly managed as this store. I showed up for my shifts the first week, and nobody even knew I was supposed to be there or what I was supposed to be doing. They just told me to walk around and fold clothes and never trained me on anything. My roommate and I would leave and shop in the mall. Now, you had to wear their clothing to work there, and when I went to buy some clothes with my discount, the manager, another college girl, just told me to take it because that's what they do. Now, I'm not someone who's comfortable with stealing, so I insisted on paying for my things, which seemingly annoyed the manager. I ended up not going back to work after a week or two because the place was such a train wreck. I kept receiving paychecks for weeks after I quit. I called corporate and tried to explain that I didn't work there anymore, but I was still getting paid for my scheduled shifts, and they seemed just as confused as I was. The paychecks kept coming. I called multiple times, as I was worried that they would demand that I had to pay the money back when they realized their mistake. I was getting annoyed by having to keep calling. Someone in corporate told me to just keep the paychecks and he would fix the issue. The checks finally stopped coming after at least 2 months of free pay, and I never did have to pay the money back. Years later, I received a letter from a lawyer in the mail in regards to a class action lawsuit against the company. I was entitled to money for them not paying me enough. It had something to do with them requiring employees to wear their clothing, which was funny considering I knew those employees had been stealing the clothes anyways. I figured I might as well be included in the class action lawsuit, as I had purchased quite a few pieces of their clothing for my short time of working there. And just to be honest, I was amused by the whole thing at this point, and just wanted to see what would happen. I ended up getting a $100 gift card in the mail. They calculated it based on how long I was paid for my employment there, not by how long I was actually employed there. I was like, man, this store really wants to keep paying me, even years later. They just refuse to take the hint that I don't work here. What in the world, guys? OP was right about that. Like, what a train wreck of a store that was. Like, I've never heard of anywhere continuing to pay someone for 2 months after they quit. I actually have a lot of jobs. I think I'm up to 5 at the moment. All 0 hours, flexible, and freelance stuff. I've got to jump around a lot if I want to make full-time pay. Most of my jobs involve caring for or entertaining children in some way. So there's this one little girl who I'll call Jane. She's about 6 and lives in my town. She has a few younger siblings and keeps showing up at my various jobs. We don't really know each other. I just recognize her face and she recognizes mine. Each time she finds me, she gets more and more confused. So during the school holidays, our interactions were sort of like, week 1, I painted her brother's face at the fair. Week 2, I helped her sister choose a book at the library event. Week 3, I sold something to her mom at the shop, etc., and so on. I've never interacted with her directly, but I've seen her at least once a week all summer. Each time she clocks me at a different job, I can see her little brain trying to figure out why I'm also here. I think I'm starting to scare her a little, like maybe I'm following her or something. No one else in her family seems to notice or remember me. So the town had this big event at the end of summer, and I wasn't working. I was there enjoying some candy floss and just chilling out dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. I'm sitting on the benches and Jane and her family walk past, and her head turns all the way around as she stares at me. I can see her little brain freaking out a little bit, like, why am I here too? I then give her a little wave and she waves back and off she goes. About half an hour later, I'm watching the school kids perform their show, and I feel a tug on my sleeve. It's little Jane, and she has tears in her eyes. She asks if I can help, and this is the first time she's ever spoken to me. She tells me she's lost her mom and she needs help, so of course I'm gonna help her. Having worked with kids, I know the drill. I get the info we need, mom's name, what she's wearing, and we find the lost children stand, and we get the staff to send out a message for mom. I assure her that mommy's looking for her too, and we'll have to wait until she finds us. She's holding my hand tight, and as we wait, she says, I'm glad you work here too. I didn't have the heart to correct her. This is such a wholesome story, guys, and I'm sure Jane's gonna remember her encounters with OP forever. And I really do love the wholesome stories as much as the crazy Karen one, guys, I'll tell you that. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/IDontWorkHereLady. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy, crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/petty revenge, where OP's coworker won't stop stealing his lunch, and he gets taught a lesson that he won't ever forget. It's such a funny story, so go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.